Welcome to The Compassionate Mind, your guide to self-compassion and emotional well-being. I'm Ashley Daniel, your host. Join us each week as we explore practical tools and insights to nurture kindness towards ourselves and others. Hello. Thank you for joining us with another episode of The Compassionate Mind. I am your host, Ashley, and really excited to keep the conversation going about all things mental health. Today, we're going to go a little bit more in depth about me. The reason why, I was trying to think about what are some good topics for us to start off with in this podcast. And of course, like anything, I'm coming from a more mental health perspective as a therapist. What are the things that we do as therapists, and how does that lend to building relationship? Because ultimately, that is what therapy is. It is a relationship between two people, and you and the client, if you're doing one-on-one therapy, and being able to actually, through that relationship, see change and growth. And that's kind of the essence of therapy. And I think that's the approach I want to take with this podcast as well, is building a relationship with you, the listener, to say, well, who am I, and what is the point of listening to this podcast, and who is this person, and all those kinds of pieces. I think also by getting to know me better, I think there's topics about compassion and shame that will come up. Like I mentioned in the last podcast, it is sort of this undercurrent that just keeps going. So in everything we talk about, there will be some topics about self-esteem, self-compassion, dialogue, shame. All those pieces will really come up. So grab something to drink. I have some sparkling water with me. I know a lot of podcasters have like a nice cup of coffee, but I'm not really a coffee drinker, if I had to admit that. I love a good, going to a coffee shop or something more for the aesthetic of it, I guess, or just for the fun of it. But I really love a good sparkling water, which I know that can create some divide between people. You either love it so much or you can't spit it out fast enough. So I am definitely one that is on I love it so much. So I have some sparkling water. So grab something to drink, whatever you need if you're on the road, and just kind of strap in, because we are going to get into a little bit about me and my career and all those kinds of things. So I wanted to start off with how I became a counselor. What was that journey, that career journey for me? I think this could be an important topic, even if you aren't really interested in being a counselor, or interested in becoming a mental health therapist. I still think career and that career journey is really powerful, and that a lot of people may struggle with making that decision. I was talking to a couple people who are graduating this year from high school, and it's crazy because I've known them since they were in kindergarten. And so to think, oh my goodness, they are already about to graduate. But when you're at that moment of really growing and trying to figure out who am I and who do I want to be, there's so many questions, right? In order to make that decision, what kind of career you're going to have, what kind of what kind of profession you're going to have, you have to know yourself, right? You have to know what your interests are. You have to know what your personality is. You have to know what you're good at, your skills, right? And when you're 16, 17, 18, and you're making this huge decision, but you're not really aware of who you are, it can be such a struggle to have to make that choice. And why I think people in college end up changing their mind and changing majors and all those things, it's because they're still trying to figure out, as they should be able to, try to figure out what they are interested in and what they like, and what's their personality, what will fit in a career. I think, unfortunately, especially in the South Asian community, we don't really allow people the time to figure that out, right? Career is so much in South Asian in the South Asian community. Career is so much more about okay, what is the best monetary gain that I can make out of this, and status. And that's really all we tend to think about when it comes to career in the South Asian community. And I think that's really unfortunate, because that's only a fraction of why we make this choice. And so as we talk about career today, I think it's important to put yourself in that mindset, whether you are in high school, younger, trying to figure out, oh my gosh, I have to make this decision. I'm getting so much pressure. Whether you're in that stage of life, maybe you are really unsatisfied with your work. You've been working and there may be a really deep dissatisfaction. You may be ready to change careers. Maybe you've been working in a different field for so long. So this can be really for anyone, but especially for anyone who's interested in mental health and wanting to start a career in that. I think hopefully what we talk about today will be helpful. So getting back to identity, trying to figure out who you are when making a career decision, that was really where I was at. My dad told me, when I was 16, he was pretty strict about making sure I didn't flip majors when I was in college. He was very, very adamant that I was not allowed to do that. And of course, he was helping pay for my education, all those things. So, I was like, okay, then what that means is I need to figure this out. Like, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. I need to be firm in it. So it actually did help me, because he didn't really say I had to do a certain major and that was it and no discussion. He didn't say that, but he did say whatever I picked, I had to be sure and I had to stick with it. So I spent all of my high school, from the age of 14 to 18, really trying to determine what kind of career I wanted. And I honestly am very thankful for that, because it made me actually think about, what do I like? What are my interests? If I'm not allowed to change, if I'm not allowed to make, if I can't backpedal in college, then okay, I need to really be sure. And it was honestly extremely helpful, because I sat back and I realized really quickly that what my parents wanted for me, what their suggestions were not for me. Some things, my parents come from a medical background, and so they really wanted me to be a doctor. I mean, let's say, South Asian 101, be a doctor, of course, that's definitely up there. And so I really did not want to go into medicine. That was an absolute no for me. And I told them that pretty young. And the next option then for them was to say pharmacy. But again, I just started to realize, okay, no, chemistry, science, not really my thing. And I, again, was able to think about my skills, my identity, all those kinds of pieces. I will say this is where a little bit of shame came up for me. I really had a lot of self-doubt, especially when I was in high school, doubt about my ability. A lot of the reasons why I said no to doing medicine, to doing pharmacy, was because I just didn't think I could do it. And when I think back, I didn't understand that at the time. I just thought, hey, I'm just being honest. Like I almost failed Algebra 2. I don't think I can actually, do this for my, go on and do more math and science and things. So I just thought I was being honest, but I really do think a big piece of it is I had a lot of self-doubt. But, I think that did help me narrow it down. So we'll get back to talking in the future about self-doubt and that critic and how that can impact career choices too. But so with deciding to boil down that career goal, I went on to really figure out, okay, so definitely no pharmacy, definitely no medicine. Now what? And I really was like, okay, I did all the things, all the options that were presented to me, which is medicine. And those are really the only two options my parents gave me. I really wasn't someone that I think anyone thought could be a lawyer. I don't like to argue, if I'm honest. So there's those kinds of things, not that that's the thing for lawyers, but that's kind of the cliche, right? Like, oh, you love to argue, so you must want to be a lawyer. I don't think that's true, but I didn't fit that cliche, right? So I really figured it was mostly through these experiences that helped open my eyes to seeing, oh, do I have a skill in something that isn't part of this list that's being given to me by my community of what's an acceptable career? And I saw it in the fact that so many of my close friends were struggling with their mental health. And it came in a lot of forms. People who would call me in the middle of the night to pray for them. We'll talk about religion and those pieces too, but to pray with them and to help them feel some kind of safety. People who would just call and be having suicidal thoughts. And this was me dealing with this at 15, 16, really feeling incapable. I don't know what to do. All I know what to do is pray for you and be with you in this dark moment and in this dark space. And it made me think, wow, like when people would come to me with these struggles, I wasn't afraid. I mean, I definitely was concerned, like, are they okay? Am I going to be able to help them? But I didn't shy away from it. I leaned into it. And so I noticed, okay, I'm able to do this. Like I have this kind of skill, and this interest or this ability that I don't see is happening everywhere. And kind of the thing we see a lot when people apply for clinical mental health therapy is this idea of, oh, people come to me, they feel safe, they come to me and they want to talk to me, and they, there is that as well. And I did notice people were coming to me and, okay, they actually felt safe with me. So that gave me the idea of, okay, maybe something in the helping field, whatever that might be. Honestly, some of the career things feel a little bit like a blur. And I've talked about this because I do a lot of things with career. I'm involved in a few career organizations. And one of the things that I think is so interesting about career is sometimes you just fall into things, right? And that's why I feel so blurry is sometimes I just feel like I fell into one opportunity after another. And it was the allowance of, okay, let me see what God has in store for me. So I think now I really do need to step into some of the spiritual parts because I just can't talk about my career without talking about my faith. And I do offer Christian counseling. That's something that if a client wants that, I offer it. But of course, if my client isn't Christian, then I will put my faith to the side as far as like having to talk about my faith to my client. That's not something that we should do as therapists. But if someone is a Christian, yes, that's kind of a part of that type of therapy. But I am a Christian. And so all of my decisions are based around my faith, and career was no exception. I really saw, okay, this feels like a calling. This feels like something that I really believe God wants me to do. And I saw that when people would come to me in their struggle, in their pain, and I would see some healing happen through prayer and through just being there for someone, and me also calling on the Holy Spirit and saying, please help me in this moment when I feel like I don't know what to do. And I could really feel that the Holy Spirit would be with me in that moment and help me. And I feel like that with therapy as well. I've really asked God for guidance to help me be present with my clients and actually provide them the help that they need. With my Christian clients, maybe we would pray before and after sessions, but it really helped me navigate career. And it's something I do see is common with people who are becoming counselors, people who are growing and trying to decide if they want to be therapists, is they actually talk about a feeling of a calling. Some people maybe come from that Christian perspective, but many do not, and yet also feel like some kind of a pull that says, oh, I'm supposed to do this, or this is bigger than me. This is something outside of me. And I really feel like that is another piece. So if you're trying to figure out your career, I think those are areas to look at. Do you feel that there is a calling, something bigger than yourself that can help you navigate this decision? Are there skills that you have that actually are better suited for certain careers? Things that maybe not everyone is pointing out to you, right? You may be given a short list, like here are the only things that we know about in the world and that we think you could do, or here are the only careers that we see people actually doing out in the world. So people will give you a very short list. And it's often up to us to actually go out there and think, well, maybe there's things out there, maybe there's careers out there that I just wouldn't even consider. I have a really cool, I just talked about someone I know who's graduating and graduating from high school, and she's going to become like an aeronautical engineer, flying planes. I never in my wildest dreams would have thought, have even imagined that. And so I think there's things out there that if we were just open our minds, we might actually be able to consider. And that's where I also think asking yourself, am I limiting myself based on how I see myself? If I think I'm not capable, how many doors am I shutting against my own self? Right? How many paths am I not allowing myself to walk through because I think I'm not capable? And that's something we have to really be aware of, especially as people are in high school making these decisions. So much of your self-worth is being questioned at that time. We are constantly being flooded with messages that say that we're not enough. And it's so important to question that. Ask the reality, is it really that I'm not capable? Is it really that I just maybe, or is it that I myself am being overly critical? I think that's a really good question. If there's a career that you're interested in that you actually might like, but you're saying no to yourself, is there something in you that is keeping you from actually walking through that door? Is it your own self-critic? Is it your own, maybe people have told you things in your past that you just aren't capable, that you aren't worthy, that you aren't smart enough? What are the things people have told you that have framed the way you see yourself? And as you're doing this career journey, whether it's in the beginning, like when you're in high school and middle school, trying to figure things out, or maybe you're in your second or third or fourth career trying to figure out what door to walk through, really consider those pieces: skill, calling, interests, talents, and then what are your own blocks? What are things that you just aren't considering for yourself? I will say, like, most of the things that I've done, I honestly never pictured being even here, doing this podcast. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that this would be the case, right? But it feels often that things it's really this willingness to be open. And I think if we can have a willingness to just say, let me see what is possible for me, then it allows, whether you believe in God or allows God to open those doors or allows opportunity to come. There is a really great meme. It got a lot of likes on my Instagram when I reposted it, but it was basically this idea about opportunity, opportunity being a butterfly. And we can chase opportunity, right? We can chase it with this net and try and grab it. Or we can create an environment where we nurture it, where we water it, and then opportunity comes to us. And I really think for me, that's what my career has been. It's creating this space where I'm open and willing to see, well, why not? I think that statement, why not, has been really powerful for me. I want to be a mental health therapist. Why not? I want to go get my master's. Why not? I want to join a private practice. Why not? That's kind of the next step, right? So I did end up getting my master's. I went to Southern Methodist University, got my master's in 2016. And I was even limited then. I told myself, you are not capable of being part of a private practice. I honestly did tell myself that. I said, that's something you do at the end of your career, right? You need to pay your dues. You need to work at these agencies and do these different things. And I really counted myself out. I am not capable. I can't run a business. Those are all the I can'ts. So at the same time, while I said, why not? I also said I can't. So, you have to be aware of both those voices, right? But I definitely told myself I can't. And I think eventually the why nots became louder than the I can'ts. Because as I'm also applying for jobs, I'm realizing, well, I'll apply. Maybe I'm wrong. And that's another thing that is a good statement to ask yourself and consider is maybe I'm wrong. If we think that we're always right all the time, we never doubt any of our thoughts, then we're really, again, limiting ourselves because we are wrong. A lot of the time, we're going to be wrong. Our thoughts are not always, most of the time, are not trustworthy. And we have to question those kinds of things. So, I said, why not? I know part of me believes that it's not possible, but I'm going to still try. And so I applied to a few private practices and I got it and I got in, and it's been quite the journey. I have some notes here, so I'm just referring to some of those things. It's been quite the journey, definitely being in private practice and seeing clients and some of how those I can'ts pop up. Another way of seeing the I can'ts is imposter syndrome. That terminology is really used quite often now, which I think is so important because it does plague us often, right? We're often struggling with imposter syndrome. Am I capable? Am I allowed in this space? Can I take up space here? Those kinds of things really do impact what doors we walk through. And really, shame is at the center of a lot of what that imposter syndrome is saying. It's this idea of I'm not capable, I'm not worthy. And if we listen to that voice, it does limit the opportunity we welcome. Maybe an opportunity will come our way, but because we believe we're not worthy, we will shut that door. And it's something that definitely has come up and can come up for me. And I think it's important as you're navigating career to think, okay, is this imposter syndrome coming up for me? Do I actually think I'm not capable, or am I actually not capable? Or is it this idea that of I'm an imposter, I don't belong here? A lot of research does talk about how people who are ethnic minorities and women have a higher likelihood of experiencing imposter syndrome. And that's something that we have to consider, right? Is what are these identities I carry? And I say, oh, this means I'm not capable, or this means I'm not worthy. And I think it's something for us to really consider and think about. And maybe in a future podcast, we'll dive a bit deeper into imposter syndrome, how to battle it, what are some things that we can practically do. I will give you one tip for imposter syndrome. It's something I have taught with my students. It's often imposter syndrome feels like I'm wearing clothes that are too big for me. Like my shirt is too big, my belt is too big, my pants are too big. And it's this feeling of like, I can't fit into this role, these duties, these things that I'm being given. I'm not capable. This is too big for me. It's too heavy for me, right? And where I think we can start to work on our dialogue is to ask ourselves, okay, is there something that is fitting? Maybe the sleeves of the shirt is too big, but the collar fits, for example, is the metaphor. For instance, with counseling, right? If there's someone who has imposter syndrome about whether they're capable of performing in counseling, it might be, okay, my shame or my worry, my anxiety is saying, okay, I can't be a therapist. Who's going to want to see me? A lot of my students talk about age, right? Like I'm too young, and people will see me and think that, oh, who is this? A lot of them are 20, 22, 23 years old. So they'll say like, who is this 23-year-old, 25-year-old? What do they know? And I remember, I still often have that feeling about youth. I think that can be it. I have students who are in their 50s and older who come to learn as well. And they also think like, who's going to want to hear from someone my age? There's always these kinds of things that we put in our way, right? So let's say that's what your anxiety is saying. Your anxiety is saying, no one is going to want to see me. No one is going to want to listen to me because I am too young, right? So that's what the anxiety is saying. But maybe you can say, okay, what is fitting? Like, okay, maybe that's what my anxiety is saying. But at the same time, I know that when I'm in a room with a client, they immediately feel relaxed. There is already an atmosphere that changes in that room. So focus on those things. Yeah, maybe I'm young, but I have this ability to build a relationship with the client so quickly, right? Look at other pieces. Maybe I'm young, but I can actually write notes really well and actually do marketing super easily. I will give you one tip. I think when it comes to imposter syndrome, a good activity I've done with my students is to use a metaphor of a shirt or wearing clothes that are too big. So if you think about that, if you're walking around with clothes, shirts that are too big, pants that are maybe 5-6 times your size, then you're going to be walking around really uncomfortable, right? And things just aren't fitting. You don't feel like you belong. And so you feel like you're drowning in these clothes. That's kind of what it can feel like with imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not supposed to be wearing these, that kind of thought. And it can be difficult in this kind of, in that kind of way to try and figure out, okay, if I am feeling this discomfort with my clothing, how do I then move forward, right? So the way that we can kind of use that metaphor is by saying, okay, even though the shirt is too big, maybe the collar is fitting well, or maybe I can find a belt that actually fits. And so it's looking at not just what isn't working, but actually looking at what is working. And I've done this activity with my students. For example, we'll have my students kind of reflect on what areas they're struggling in. For instance, some students may say, okay, I'm really struggling with feeling like I'm capable. I feel like I'm really young. A lot of my students are fairly young, maybe 23 to 25 years old. And they'll often say, why would anyone want to listen to me? Or people maybe will tell me that I'm too young, that I'm not capable of being their therapist because I'm so young. So that thought can often come up. So if that is one of their voices, right, that kind of anxiety or shame that is under the imposter syndrome, so I will talk to them about, okay, well, what is working? And they might say something like, okay, when I'm in a session with a client, I see that I'm able to have this therapeutic relationship, that they feel really comfortable with me. They might also say, oh, I actually am able to really listen well. I can do these basic skills very well, and maybe list them off. So we can lean into what is actually working and help them actually lean into those pieces as the other clothes are slowly starting to fit, as you grow into the pieces that maybe aren't as fitting, right? Like maybe leaning into, okay, I'm able to develop this relationship. I know that's my strength, and letting that kind of be the anchor for that student while they're still trying to grow into, okay, I'm still figuring out how to market in a private practice, or I'm still trying to figure out how to do this maybe higher level of skill, whatever it might be. So that's a way that you could work on some imposter syndrome, is leaning into what your strengths are, what is working, and allow there to be a natural understanding that maybe some imposter syndrome is normal. The more that we actually push ourselves, the more we get out of our comfort zone, the more likely we're going to feel that. We're going to feel like, oh, maybe I don't belong, or maybe this is too much for me. It's because you're challenging yourself. So a little bit of an acceptance. Maybe this is okay. Maybe this is normal to experience a bit of imposter syndrome, especially as I take up space when I'm usually not doing that, or I usually don't have that kind of opportunity. So overall, I hope that this podcast helped you think about career, how shame and sometimes anxiety, those kinds of voices can keep us from really experiencing these different opportunities. And overall, I'm just really excited to give you a little bit more info about me. Who am I? What is my background a bit more, and help you understand. I think the more you know about me, the more that relationship will build, even through this podcast, that every episode we have, you will feel a little bit more of a understanding about who your host is and what this is all about. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed today's content, tune in for our next episode. Don't forget, subscribe and share with your friends and family. Until next time, stay compassionate.